Teaching Intercultural Appreciation, a Distance Learning Experiment. My name is Eve Blowbaum. I'm a professor and co-chair of the Department of Sociology at Johnson County Community College, which is a large Midwestern public two-year institution. At JCCC, we teach 3 core courses in sociology: Introduction to Sociology, Social Problems, and Sociology of Families. All 3 of those core courses are 100-level courses. And in each course, we've needed to designate an institution-wide SLO, or student learning outcome, on which we are going to evaluate students in that course. So the SLO we've selected for Sociology of Families is that students should be able to demonstrate knowledge of the broad diversity of the human experience and the individual's connection to the global society. So this research is seeking to identify an effective method for addressing this student learning outcome in my online Sociology of Families courses. I teach 2 sections online every semester. So just a brief overview of some existing literature. Many people are familiar with Allport's contact hypothesis, which argues that under the right conditions, contact between people of different backgrounds and beliefs can really serve to reduce or mitigate stereotypes and negative perspectives on one another. But we also know that it's not that many college students who will ultimately have the opportunity to study abroad. In fact, it's fewer than 10% of American college graduates have studied abroad. And of those students who have studied abroad, only 1.7% of them are community college students. So this has led me to begin looking for ways to do what's called internationalization at home for my students, so that they can have a little bit of that same experience and learn about different people in different places without actually having to pay the money or spend the time studying abroad long term. Custer and Twilmanen in 2017 argued that there are some consistent pitfalls for these internationalization at home activities. One is unfamiliar technology. Because I'm doing this in an online course, those concerns are reduced a bit. We don't start the interaction that is of interest for this research until 3 to 4 weeks into the semester. So by that time, most students have had an appropriate level of experience using the learning management system, and so that's not a big barrier to them by that point. Time zone differences can also be an issue. That's less problematic for asynchronous discussion forums, which is what I'm using here. And then language barriers are another potential pitfall. We do still have some language barriers, but the vast majority of the guest students that I'm having participate in the discussion forums are pretty fluent in English, so that is not as much of a concern in this particular case. So Custer and Twilmanen also write, while virtual exchanges clearly represent rich opportunities for enhancing global learning and bringing about intercultural competency, particularly in educational settings where students may not easily otherwise have access to international contact, these learning activities are not yet sufficiently explored or without obstacles. So the primary purpose of this research is to begin exploring structured discussion forums with international guest students participating and see whether those are learning opportunities that benefit students in terms of their intercultural appreciation. Methodology here involved data collection during the 2018-2019 academic year. So during the fall 2018 and spring 2019 semesters, I taught 2 online sections of Sociology of Families in each of those semesters. Those sections cap at 25 students, enrolled students per section. So there is a total of about 100 students that come into those 4 sections over the course of the 2 semesters in that academic year. I did end up throwing out the data of students who only completed a pre-test or a post-test. So the total sample size here is 61 students enrolled for credit in Sociology of Families online at JCCC in the fall 2018 and spring 2019 semesters. The instrument used to evaluate students on their intercultural appreciation was borrowed from the work of Custer and Twilmanen. And what they actually did was take the Global Perspectives Inventory, or GPI. That is mostly, it appears to be for use in a business environment. And what they've done is pull 6 items from that that are applicable to what students are doing in these classes. And then in addition to those 6 items from the GPI, they also looked at just a few demographics. So students' age in years, they identified gender of the students, and their parents' highest level of education. And that instrument was administered as a pre-test at the start of the semester, and then again as a post-test near the end of the semester. In between the pre and post-test, in addition to the rest of the course materials, they completed 8 discussion forums. Just real quick, the items from the GPI that are pulled, students have the opportunity to strongly disagree, agree, or strongly agree with these 6 statements. I consider different cultural perspectives when thinking about global problems. I consider different perspectives before drawing conclusions about the world around me. I can discuss cultural differences knowledgeably. I see myself as a global citizen. I think it is important to have people from many cultural backgrounds in my life. And in my college courses, I have had opportunities to interact among students with different backgrounds and beliefs. So for the JCCC enrolled students, who were the only ones from which data were collected on this, they were divided into control and experimental groups. For the fall of 2018, one section was assigned to be the control, and the other section was assigned to be the experimental group. And then in spring of 2019, the 2 sections were merged in our learning management system, so they functioned as one double-sized section. But students were randomly assigned by the LMS group assigner to be either control or experimental group. So in the control group, the JCCC enrolled students interacted only with other JCCC enrolled students. In the experimental group, students that were enrolled for credit at JCCC were interacting with other JCCC enrolled students, as well as Udmurt State students who were guests in the course. So now the fun stuff, the results. Just a little bit of demographic information here to show that there were no statistically significant differences between the control and experimental groups. Roughly the same in size, the difference is just due to student attrition. Roughly the same in average age, 24.2 years of age in the control group, 25.2 years of age in the experimental group. And then you can see here the differences in reported gender and parents' education, but statistical analysis on these 2 groups means comparisons showed no real difference between them. So these groups are demographically approximately equal. This is just a quick look at how the pre and post-test scores were distributed. You can see this is a mostly normal distribution for both pre and post-test. The clustered bars here, the pre-test scores are in blue, with post-test scores in orange. So you can see that the mode of the pre-test scores was 19, the mode on the post-test was 20. And you can just see that scores shift just a little bit to the right. So slight improvement from pre to post-test. So in order to examine whether students were making significant progress on intercultural appreciation, that student learning outcome, I used a paired samples t-test to look at students' pre-test scores compared to their post-test scores. And what I found is that the average pretest score was 18.93 compared to an average post-test score of 19.69. And that difference is significant at the p is less than 0.01 level. You can see there the p-value is actually 0.005. This indicates that structured discussion forums are potentially useful for improving students' intercultural appreciation. However, when I did an independent samples t-test to look at whether or not the incorporation of international guest students was making any difference, I calculated the change in score for each student and used that as the dependent variable, with control or experimental group membership as the independent variable. And the results suggest that including the international guest students in those structured discussion forums may not enhance students' intercultural appreciation. You can see the average change in score for the control group was 0.38 compared to an average change in score for the experimental group of 1.17, which seems like it might be significant, but it does not reach the level of significance. So what's going on here with these data and results? A couple ideas that I've explored a little bit. One of the things I noticed is that on average, students are coming into the course with pretty high intercultural appreciation scores to begin with. So they don't have a lot of room for big progress on this. In addition, in both semesters, the control group begins with a slightly higher pre-score average. It's not much higher, it's between 1/4 and 1/2 point in both instances, but they are starting a bit higher, and that's a difference that I can't really explain. One possible way of doing this for future data collection is that I might try taking the pretest assessment and then randomizing those groups to ensure that the pretest score average is the same across both control and experimental group. One possibility that was considered was that students may have enough pre-existing exposure to diversity that this is why I'm not getting a big impact really from having the international guest students. I did find that when we look at students who said they strongly agreed that they had opportunities to interact with other students who had different backgrounds and beliefs in their college courses, those students who strongly agreed actually saw an average decrease in their scores from pre to post test. So they actually tended to drop by a little more than 1/4 point from the beginning of the semester to the end. For students who agreed, they saw a slight increase in score of about 1 point. And for students who said they disagreed that they had those opportunities in their college courses, they saw an average score increase of 1.67 points. So one potential explanation is that for students who already have a perceived high degree of exposure to diversity, again, they're just not having that much room to grow or progress on this measure. One consideration, though, is that this is an area in which students may have a response bias. They may perceive their diversity exposure to be greater than it is, or they may perceive there to be a more socially acceptable answer. So I would really like to find an instrument that would get at these concepts in perhaps a more subtle way, and students wouldn't be quite as alert to what they're being asked or why. One idea that I considered was if online students, if those online formatted courses might be attracting a slightly more diverse group of students, students who may be on average older, maybe have more life experiences, maybe be juggling family and work life. But when I asked our Office of Institutional Planning and Research for some data comparing the students in these 4 course sections over the academic year 2018-2019 to the general student population at Johnson County Community College, I found that in fact the online students in these 4 sections were on average more likely to be white and on average younger than the typical JCCC student. So certainly that hypothesis is thrown out. I do notice obviously the students in the online families course are highly disproportionately female. These courses tend to be 80 to 90% female. That is true for sociology of families at JCCC, whether you're talking about online or face-to-face courses. So we don't know why that specific course is more likely to attract female students, but it is. And so the high proportion of female students could potentially be impacting results here. One final thought is that there just may not be enough difference between American life and Russian life for interacting with Russian students online over the course of the 1 semester to have any kind of big impact on students' understanding of and appreciation for intercultural diversity. But regardless of the explanation, we do need to be a little bit careful in interpreting these results for a few reasons I've listed here. First of all, the effects of this one course during this 1 semester can't really be effectively isolated. Students may be taking more than one course, and obviously while they're taking courses, they're also having other life experiences. So it's really impossible to tease out what is the effect of this course and what's the effect of other courses or life experiences or the combination thereof that's having the impact on student progress in intercultural appreciation. Again, there's the possible response bias. The instrument may not be providing the most valid results because students may not be answering entirely truthfully for whatever reason. Another concern with the instrument is that it's not validated. So again, I would like to keep looking for a better instrument to use. And then smaller sample size. This sample size will grow as I continue to collect data. So hopefully that's something that I can improve on, and I'll have a little bit more data, make those statistics a little bit more robust as I continue to explore this question. Thank you.